No surprise here, the mainstream media is still reporting this absolutely debunked story that Congressman Matt Gaetz asked President Trump for a preemptive blanket pardon before President Trump left office. But we already know that President Trump said that did not happen. We reported it on this show last night. But all the news, fake news media had to do was call Mar-a-Lago, ask to speak to President Trump, and he will tell them. The media doesn't do its job anymore, you see. It's way too much work to actually pick up the phone or, I guess, search for the headline and corroborate or debunk an easily verifiable story. But the media has their narrative set. Matt Gaetz must be destroyed, and the media cares nothing about the truth. Here with me now to discuss, attorney and political guru Erin Elmore. Erin, good to see you. Thanks for being with us.
So much for having me.
Erin, Matt Gaetz is just the latest target. The left isolates a target, Alinsky style, and works to eliminate them, and then we'll move on to the next one. Do you think that Congressman Gaetz can fight back and stop the cancel mob in their tracks? Because they won't stop here. We know that. They've already started to move on to DeSantis unsuccessfully.
You know, what's alive and well is cancel culture and lies. The truth in journalism is completely dead. And what we know this is right now, this is an attempt to silence conservative speech. This is censorship in its finest form. We had allegations that started with criminality. Nothing has materialized, absolutely nothing. All we have is rumors and innuendo. They're talking about quote unquote trafficking. The only thing that the mainstream media is trafficking in is lies and disinformation. Who's going to make this stop? That's why we need strong people like Matt Gaetz, who wants to drain the swamp, who cares about America, who cares about the state of Florida, that wants to see diversity of opinion, whether you are a Democrat, Republican, or an independent. The right thing to do in America isn't to silence the opposition. It's let the opposition have their word. Let's not smear people's reputations just because we don't like what they have to say. It's sick and it's disturbing and it needs to stop.
Absolutely. And, you know, you look at the lack of evidence compared to the evidence that is there for someone like Cuomo, for example. You know, the women that come forward one after another. While there are no witnesses in the Matt Gaetz case, you'd think someone would come forward for at least and make up something, you know, to try to get rich or something. But we really just don't have that. And yet, if you were to watch, for example, I flipped around yesterday when the Congress people were having their press conference about Biden's border crisis that was being covered on our network and other conservative outlets. And I flipped around to MSNBC, and MSNBC, what were they covering? Matt Gaetz, and they were showing these ominous pictures of Matt Gaetz leaning into President Trump. And what cracked me up about it was the ominous picture of Matt Gaetz leaning in and whispering to President Trump was at a Trump rally with 30 or 50,000 people sitting there, which is, of course, where you ask President Trump for a blanket pardon. I'm sure is in the middle of a Trump rally with 30 to 50,000 people sitting around you, right? So the whole thing doesn't make sense. But apparently, you know, leftist cancel mob audiences don't care about truth, or they would be able to put those puzzle pieces together and say, you know, I think if Matt Gaetz were going to ask President Trump for a blanket pardon, it probably wouldn't be at a Trump rally. He was probably just saying hello to the president at a rally. This doesn't make sense. Something doesn't add up here. Where are the witnesses like we see with Cuomo? And why in the heck is MSNBC covering this instead of the Biden border crisis, where we have 170,000 illegals invading our country right now, and half of them are in some kind of trouble or sick or being killed or being raped or bringing drugs or being trafficked? Why aren't they asking those questions, Erin?
That is the newsworthy story. You have hit the nail on the head. But of course, that doesn't fit the leftist agenda. That doesn't fit the leftist narrative. Instead, they just want to smear Republicans, whether previously it was President Trump, yes, he was a Russian asset, whether it was Brett Kavanaugh, who was a gang rapist, who was Jim Jordan, and down the line. They try to take down every single Republican. Thankfully, we've stood up for ourselves and fought back, and it's not working. And we have to continue to do so. You know what I think? I am an attorney, but I'm not advising in a legal capacity on this case. What I would tell people to do, if people are going to, libel, slander, say things that they know are not false, we should hit them where it hurts, and that's their wallet. You can't just say these things about people and harm their reputation and do irreparable damage to them. It's not right. Today, CNN came out and said that Congressman Gaetz, was blaring loud music in his office and had something like 8 dates with women consensually in the course of 2 years. I'm sorry. Having 8 dates, I didn't realize that that was something that should be frowned upon or a crime. You know what our friend Governor Cuomo has? 10 allegations of sexual assault, but the mainstream media says nothing. It's truly sick. Honestly, it's really sad. Imagine if you're really looking at a CNN or an MSNBC as your source of air quotes news. You know absolutely nothing about what's really going on in America.
That's true. Erin, Governor DeSantis is also being targeted with fake news. 60 Minutes got busted chopping up his comments and fabricated a pay-for-play story. And this is absolutely, at some point, media malpractice, but it seems as though the left is never, ever held accountable, never, ever fact-checked. They're not even fact-checked ever on social media, at least not by the social media big tech types. So where does this end, and what is the best way that I always like to take it down to the real micro level where this audience can play a role? What can this audience do to help put a stop to this? Because this cancel culture has really become a cancer of cancel cultures, and we have to stop it.
Thank God for people like Governor DeSantis in our great state of Florida, because he took on 60 Minutes and he said, what you are saying is not true. He took on those reporters that were slandering him and said, hey, this is not true. And I think we as educated Americans, we as educated Floridians, we as educated patriots have to go in those comments on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and say, this is not true. Because I know those platforms are biased against conservatives, but if at least we start dropping comments and changing the narrative and having people think for themselves, we will start effectuating change. We have to talk to our neighbors. We have to talk to our friends. We have to be advocates. The great Dr. Sebastian Gorka once told me, Erin, you have to fight. You can't get tired of fighting, because we are patriots and we are not at risk of losing our job because we are already outspoken conservatives. We have to fight for those who don't have a voice or who can't speak up. And that's what I would tell everyone who has the power to speak up. Speak up, advocate for freedom in this country, advocate for real journalism instead of fake news, because if not, we are going to become a socialist country. And if socialism is so great, why are people losing and risking their lives to leave places like Cuba? And that's the truth of the matter.
Erin Elmore, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, my dear friend. I appreciate your time.
All right.